Coming up on the LCS preview show, we face-check the highlights, ward the playoffs, and break down why Lulu is such a bully. Plus, we reveal the 5 most super plays of Week 8. Don't touch that browser. The LCS preview show starts right now.
Let's turn around the game. Go 4-0 in Super Week. What a win! Oh! What a turnaround. SK Gaming just wrecked Fanatic.
Cloud9 with the crazy victory.
Oh, you could see they just won the game with a single team fight.
In first place, it is Gambit and SK Gaming.
But of course, one player pulled away from the pack. This week's MVP is Reginald.
Oh my gosh,
wow.
Reggie, solo Suna, TSM taking a 4-0 Super Week. Reginald's coming up big for these guys.
What's up, everyone? I'm Riving 2003, hanging out here in the cozy confines of our LCS studio, along with Joshua Jat Leesman. How you doing this morning, Jat?
I'm doing fantastic. We had 1 week off of the LCS, but now, after some international competition and some rest for some of the guys, they're ready for another big week of LCS.
I know I'm ready, so let's get right to it. Kicking off the LCS preview show with a look back at Super Week 8 of the European LCS, starting with the battle between a Rawcat team in freefall and the men in suits, who were looking to hold on to a share of first place. That matchup proved to be quite a game, both teams entering the game with a 10-6 record, but there could only be one that remained at the top of the table.
And these teams always play each other extremely close. This game was absolutely no different. Big turret dive there from Overpow.
7 minutes in, it looked like it was going to be all right, but Overpow coming from mid lane made it happen. 36 minutes in, Gambit gained a little more ground with Alex's play here.
Yeah, and they just held out for so long in this one. They were down 7,000 gold before this fight. Everyone tried to get Alex, but nobody could finish him off.
And that's when you think Gambit has it. Once they start winning the fights, they put themselves in the momentum for the win, but a risky Baron call would put it back in the favor of Rawcat.
Yeah, and this was such a crazy game. Look at this. They're up 7,000 gold before this one, but it just goes to show you when there's 95,000 gold on one side and 89,000 gold on the other, the 6,000 difference doesn't really matter. Celavar, in particular, came out huge in that fight with Caitlyn.
And Rawcat takes sole possession of first place with that game. The next game we look to highlight, Gambit versus SK. Fresh off their loss against Rawcat, Gambit had to take on the red-hot SK.
Yeah, but Gambit's always the team to bounce back, and Diamond, right at the start of the game, was jumping all over the place with Diamond. Check out this kick.
Yeah, he definitely gave the team momentum with this play. A play like this gives everybody enough to keep going the long haul, and the plays just kept getting better in this game from there on out.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of Lee Sin highlights throughout these highlights that we showed from Europe, because they're getting really good at that Lee Sin. But this last fight was just Gambit overpowering SK right here.
Another 10,000 gold lead coming into this game, and like you said, overpowering indeed. You can see all the way to the back line. Alex, he's kind of creating his own party for himself. Exactly. Distortion's in, double kill for himself. Diamonds, Lee Sin, and that was 5-0 and 10, and it was a big difference in that game. Next one we look to highlight, Alliance versus Rawcat. One team on the way up and another on the way down.
Yeah, Alliance was just on fire all the Super Week, and a lot of it had to do with just the coordination of the team in general. This play in particular, kicking right into a hook.
Yeah, shook to the hook. Not much better than it can get than that, like Joe said. And you can just see him, a sigh of relief there, and the team would continue. They show their hand here with 3 Vaynes over 2 Cassidans on the full house play, 5v5.
I think Shook could get a little bit more excited. Even in this chaotic team fight, he's able to get a flash kick on Celavar just to make sure no one gets away. And Alliance as a whole was just playing so well in this game against Rawcat. You know, Rawcat's a team that plays very slow controlled League of Legends, so to take them out in a game matching them in a fairly low kill one like this one was impressive by Alliance.
They were all over them that game. Were able to take out another win for themselves, and good teamwork from Froggen and his Caster were too much for Rawcat to handle. And we see coming into the matchup is going to be a big one, Alliance versus Gambit, and right off the bat, again, like you said, Lee Sin plays.
Yeah.
Here's Shook.
Oh look, Shook just flashing in and landing the Q from point blank range, making it undodgeable, getting the first blood kill to Froggen on Lulu, very important.
Well, Alex Each would get his revenge, and a little bit of tunnel focus on him gives him the ability to pick up a double kill here, getting out real cheekily.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice escape for Alex, where when you're running away, someone just gifts you a kill so you can get a double afterwards. He's pretty lucky about that one.
At 43 minutes, it was Shook with another pick onto this one. It was on to Genja's Sivir this time, allowing Alliance to pick up 3 kills and push the Nexus this time.
Yeah, and how many times do you have to kill Darien before he's actually dead? Apparently it's 3.
Yep.
And Alliance was able to do it all 3 times in a very close finish here. You can see the gold was very close at the end of this game, but Alliance was strong team play and some hype.
Finishing the Super Week 4-0. We see the next matchup to highlight, SK versus Rawcat. SK taking on Rawcat was going to be that game where they thought, is SK going to keep going? Will they have the tear that they need?
They had the answer pretty early here with Svenskeren coming in at exactly the right moment. No, he didn't save Freddy, but he definitely changed the game right here, getting the Aatrox passive as well as finishing him off after the revive.
A lot of people are just kind of up in arms of how SK has been doing this over and over, but the teamwork and the synergy has just been so strong, and plays like this after a sneaky Baron and just definitive strong play to take back the game. Or not even take back the game, push the game to the end.
They're only 32 minutes in here, and they're just steamrolling over Rawcat, and they gained that advantage mainly through objective control and smart play. It was 6 kills to 4 before they steamrolled Rawcat here for the win.
Yeah, Svenskeren's double kill in the top lane we saw really set SK on the right path that game. The next game highlighted Fanatic versus SK as they head into their final game of Super Week with a 2-1 mark.
Yeah, and everyone was thinking, hey, maybe Fnatic's completely out of their slump here. Maybe they're playing better this time. But the inconsistency continues to show here. SK, though, in a close match early.
Right, Fnatic's Peke coming up big on this one. You thought he wasn't going to be in the fight, but he shows up out of nowhere on Ari. A little help there, absolutely. We see Fnatic still pushing through 23 minutes into this one. A little bit more roam from everybody coming in. We can see the hook from long range.
Such a long initiation there by SK. And that was really a decider there. Fnatic was trying to disengage after being pushed up too far with too big of a disadvantage, and SK just gains an even bigger lead.
And this is how SK makes these opportunities, Canda Panda, to open up the first kill of the fight and cause Fnatic to just go into chaos.
Yeah, SK right here, more coordinated play. Again, a fairly low kill game, but an early victory for SK, getting the 10th kill there as they dive into the base and closing out Fnatic.
A disappointing Super Week for Fnatic, while SK Gaming finished at 3-1 and earned a share of first place. And after 3 days and 16 games of the European table, sets up like this. Gambit remains tied at the top, with SK Gaming joining them in first place.
After that, it's Rawcat and a 3-way tie for 4th place. And then at the bottom, Millennium kind of jumps back into playoff contention thanks to their 2-2 Super Week performance.
But despite Millennium winning 2 games in a single week for the first time all year, the team that made perfect use of the supersized slate of games was Alliance. They turned in the 4th perfect Super Week in European LCS history and leapfrogged from 7th place into a tie for 4th. Now for more on Alliance's perfect week, I'd like to welcome Quickshot to the show. What's going on, Quickshot?
Hey Riv, I'm doing pretty well. I'm excited to be back in the LCS after the Intel Extreme Masters last week. Looking forward to some more games.
Likewise. So Quickshot, what do you see as the key to Alliance's Super Week success, and what do they have to do to stay on or near the top of the table for the rest of the spring split?
Well, the way in which Alliance played in their Super Week was very smart. They played patiently, without risk. They executed well with each of their team compositions. But we do have to call out the elephant in the room. They didn't look to be in the greatest of shape against Gambit on the last day of Super Week. And if it wasn't for actually finding a few picks, Alliance may have actually lost that game. What we learned, though, was that Alliance has the individual ability to hold or win their lanes, win the mid game, and if they're behind, they also have the ability to pounce on an opportunity when it presents itself. Gambit gave it to them, they took advantage. But in order for Alliance to keep up their winning ways, they need to stabilize their play and find consistency. It's something that has been sorely lacking all split long, and they have to buck that trend.
Right. And one guy that I have to bring up is the creator of Team Alliance and this week, or the Week 8 MVP, Froggen. Is he still one of the elite mids in Europe, and is his backpack big enough to carry Alliance deep into the playoffs?
Well, it definitely is. You know, Froggen is an immensely strong player, and during Super Week, he played his champions flawlessly. He was finding picks with Cassidy and LeBlanc, he was landing perfect spears with Nidalee. If there is one weakness which I feel Froggen could work on, though, it's his roaming around the map. It's something that Froggen's not very strong at, and he prefers to sit in the mid lane, farm up heavily until he gets items for those mid-game team fights, much like the old Season 2 mid style of play.
Well, we'll get to see real soon whether Alliance is a contender or a pretender as they take on Gambit in our LCS preview show, BF Game of the Week. Break down this rematch for us, Quickshot.
Wow, what a game to kick off Week 9. Now, their head-to-head record in the LCS does sit at 1 win apiece. And with Alliance snatching the game out of Gambit's hands during Super Week, I feel like Gambit will have something to prove here today. Also keep in mind that Gambit will not be happy about their semi-final performance at IEM last weekend, and they'll want to be improving from that. For Alliance, this is a team that went 0-4 in the first Super Week of the split, and after 8 weeks of hard work, they managed to go 4-0 in the most recent one. But as I've already said, consistency in their gameplay is not something that we come to expect, and we need to see if they can keep up that good form from 2 weeks ago, considering there was a break, and considering Froggen was with us on the analyst desk at IEM, so there's a lot of pressure on their shoulders.
And of course, our BF Game of the Week is just the first of 8 games that will rearrange the LCS table setting. After Gambit and Alliance face off, it's the Super Hot Crew versus Millennium, Roccat taking on Fnatic, and the men of C-Dub battle SK Gaming. Then on Friday, the action kicks off with Gambit fighting Millennium, Roccat taking on SK Gaming, Alliance facing the Super Hot Crew, and finishing off Week 9, it's Fnatic versus the Copenhagen Wolves. And heading into this week's matches, there is one roster change we have to talk about, as the Super Hot Crew will be starting a new mid laner. Quickshot?
Well, this is the first roster swap here in Europe. Super Hot Crew announced earlier this week that Moops would be moving to the bench, and starting in his place would be Selfie. Now, the change comes out on the heels of a split full of struggles for Moops. He had the least kills, the lowest KDA out of all 8 starting mid laners in the European LCS. Turning our attention to Selfie, on the other hand, he's been a substitute for Mecha Makers. He played under the nickname Chuyu until he changed his name to Selfie for his LCS debut today. This is a player that is known for his incredibly aggressive assassin play, and he's got the potential to sort of reinvigorate that Super Hot Crew early game. I want to see if those aggressive champions will work with Impaler against the rest of the LCS teams.
And one of the amazing things about this week's European games is that all 8 of them have playoff implications, since every team still has a shot at the postseason and every squad has a chance for a top 2 finish. Currently at the top of the table, fighting for that first round bye is Gambit, SK Gaming, and Roccat. And while Roccat and SK both have been the most dominant teams in the league at one point during the spring, Gambit has been the most consistent. The men in suits are the only European LCS team to win at least one game every week this split. But even more peculiar is the rock, paper, scissors effect of these teams in head-to-head games. Gambit is 2-1 against SK Gaming this spring, while SK Gaming has handed Roccat a third of their LCS losses, going 3-0 against Overpow and the rookies. But while Roccat has struggled against SK Gaming, they've dominated Gambit, going 3-0 this spring, including their win during Super Week. Quickshot, why does Gambit beat SK, beat Roccat, beat Gambit?
This is an incredibly difficult question, but I think the gameplay style of each team is largely responsible for why they can beat their respective opponents. So for an example, Gambit is able to disrupt SK Gaming's patient and slow map play, and this allows Gambit to find advantages and have their lead in that head-to-head. But that patient, controlled style of play from SK Gaming allows them to beat Roccat, who tend to rely on early ganks, early presence. That's their key to victory. And it's Rockat's strength in the early game that allows them to find weaknesses in Gambit's gameplay. And generally when Roccat grabs a lead, they don't tend to let it go. But with so few games left in the split, these head-to-head matchups could actually determine seeding going into the playoff bracket. And it's going to be the teams that find diversity into their play that can mix it up and try to buck these trends that will have an advantage in that postseason and making sure they qualify for the next split.
All right, Quickshot, it was great picking your brain. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, the pleasure's always mine, Riv. We'll see you then.
Now, one team that is conspicuously absent from our discussion of the top squads in the league is Fnatic. After winning the European LCS last season and getting off to a perfect start this spring, the reigning champs went on an epic 8-game losing streak. But after a second-place finish at last week's IEM World Championships, it looks like the Fnatic fleet might have righted the ship. Now, for more on the team's run at Katowice, I'd like to welcome Shox to the show. What's going on, Shox?
What's up, Riv?
So you had a chance to speak with Fnatic after their second-place finish at IEM.
Yeah, I did. I did talk to them, and they said that they most definitely got a confidence boost after their performance at IEM, but also that they realized that they really need to buckle down with the end of the season here in sight, because they're still a very inconsistent team overall. They also mentioned that they're having some trouble adjusting to the patch, and while they can beat every team in the EU LCS, they can also fall to any one of those teams, and that a lot depends on if they're having a good or a bad day, and right now, that's just not good enough.
And while Fnatic didn't get as big of a confidence boost from their second-place finish as some would have thought, how are they feeling about Europe's chances against other regions and beating Cloud9 in what's becoming quite a rivalry?
Well, they mentioned that about Europe's performance at IEM, that Europe is not superior by any means. They also pointed out that Cloud9 had some really good games, and that Korea overall has stronger teams than both EU and NA, but that they are not unbeatable, that they also have their weaknesses. And when it comes down to the relationship between Fnatic and Cloud9, Fnatic mentioned there is most definitely a rivalry, but it's a good rivalry. These teams have a lot of respect for each other. They really enjoy playing each other, and let's be fair, it's always good games.
All right, Chalks, thank you very much for the inside info on Fnatic. We'll check in with you again next week.
No problem, Riv.
All right, now it's time for a little bit of whimsy as Jap breaks down the latest mid lane bully.
Yeah, and while Caston was the mid lane insta-ban during the first half of the spring split, the new champ that's probably going to spend a little bit of time in ban prison is Lulu. As we've seen in the LCS and last week at IEM, she is rapidly becoming a mid lane ban and pick priority. And let's take a look at some of the numbers to try and figure it out. First off, if we look at it, we can see Help picks 280 damage on a 0.4 ratio and Glitterlands 260 on a 0.5 ratio, meaning her whole burst combo would only be about 540 damage without much of a big AP ratio, and that doesn't seem that impressive. But when you add in cooldown reduction of Runes and Masteries and Athene's Unholy Grail, which is the main build on Lulu to start, a Doran's Ring, and then of course the blue buff, you see where the damage is really coming from. Let's take a look at a bit more math now, because you can see with that AP ratio, it's about the cooldowns on this. The AP ratios are factored in too. Help Picks does a bit more damage, but you get 2 Glitter Lances off in the combo, meaning one combo of just getting in range is a guaranteed 988 damage, not counting auto attacks, and that's already a 33% more increase in damage. Let's actually take a look at this in one of the LCS games earlier in the year. Alex just has to look at Cow Chart. He gets the Help Picks on, Glitter Lances him once, and because he has so much cooldown reduction, he can walk away and then throw the next Glitter Lance on top of Cow Chart to finish him off. Just by being in range, he decimated Kale, who is the seemingly bigger burster, but it's actually Lulu. So when you look at the amount she can deal, you can really see how her pick and ban trends have increased throughout the LCS. She was non-existent early, then people discovered that Athene's Unholy Grail build, comboed with the Lich Bane, of course, for extra auto attacks, and she just skyrocketed in the last couple weeks in pick and ban percentages. I expect to see her either picked or banned in the majority of this week's games for sure.
If you're watching Champ Select and thinking, I wonder who they're going to pick in the mid lane besides Lulu, then we might be able to help. Here are the most 5 picked mid laners in the LCS, or as we like to call it, the Insta-Lock. Let's kick it off with the most picked mid laners in the European LCS. Coming in at number 5 is the little lane bully that could, Lulu. And one note, she has the highest win percentage on this list by far. While the king of the European mid lane is the champ who likes to wear lederhosen and drink barrels full of fermented hops. Go figure. It is Gragas. Now, across the Atlantic, the list of top-played mid laners looks like this. Interestingly enough, Ziggs is the only one on the list with a losing record. Sorry, little guy. And tied for first in the mid lane popularity contest is Gragas and LeBlanc. It's hard to get 2 more visually disparate champions. But, hey, opposites attract, especially in the mid lane. So now, it's been a couple of weeks since we've counted down the champs played in the LCS this spring, so we've got a little bit of making up to do, starting with Swain. He was the first to make his LCS debut back in Week 7, followed quickly by Nocturne. That brings us to Super Week, where 3 more champs made their LCS debut in 2014. The first 2 actually made an appearance in the same game. On day 1, CLG picked a top lane Rise for Nien. Dignitas countered that with Jace. Funny enough, the next game CLG played, Rise received his first ban of the spring split. Our final newbie was Jarvan IV. And once again, it was CLG who jumped out of the meta, although it did have cataclysmic results. Now I'd like to take a moment, give a couple shout outs to some people who correctly tweeted that Swain would make or be the next champion to make his way into the LCS back in Week 7. So way to go to @PeterPolansky1 and Sexy Mixa 12. Now, if you think your crystal ball is as shiny as theirs, then hit us up on Twitter and make a guess at who will be the next champ to make their debut. Just remember to mark it with a hashtag LCS Preview. Now it's time to turn our attention to the ongoing story of the Purple Assassin who just wants to be loved. The story of Caston took a happy turn as the Voidwalker Rift walked out of the banned jail and onto the Rift during Super Week. He was picked 3 times in North America and twice in Europe. And though they were still on the 4.2 patch, we can celebrate the Purple People Eater while he's out on parole. We're just a couple weeks away from hitting the 4.4 patch in the LCS. So I think that calls for a moment of silence one last time. So now it's time to turn our attention to North America and the biggest games from their Super Week of LCS action, starting with the rematch between Team Solo Mid and Team Coast.
Let's get right into these highlights.
So looking at this one, it was a big match coming out last time these two teams met. Coast did shock the world by upsetting TSM.
Yeah, and again here you can see Nintendo predicting the flash from Xpecial. He's done this twice against TSM, and again it picks up the first blood.
Yeah, brilliantly timed vault breaker. Like you said, doing it again, over and over. It's just the mechanics. But Team Solo Mid got out of that laning phase, and they made sure all of the fights were in their favor.
Yeah, and Coast have shown time and time again they're not the greatest in brawly team fights like this, and they tried to force in the jungle here a little bit. It was not the best idea because no one can throw down with TSM in North America as of now.
Nope, TSM gets their revenge on this game. They moved themselves up to a cool 14-3. It's going to be a nice record as they move on. They get Bjergsen back this week as well. We'll see how that works out.
There we go.
Big hug indeed. Everybody's hugging the LCS. We'll get some more out. TSM now up against CLG in the next highlight. This time facing off against their longtime rivals, but the odd one getting caught out.
CLG pulls some really tricky moves at level 1 in these games. Again, they're able to pick up the first blood onto double lift, which seemed very scary at the start of this game.
Look at expert flash here at 11 minutes into the game from double lift to dodge condemn and get a long range one on that one to get a good kill onto Reginald.
Yeah, it seemed like things were looking up for CLG as they try and force this dragon, but this is where things went wrong.
Yeah, the game started to go completely downhill here. Call out over to Pastry Time, the long range boomerang. He's happy about that one.
Yeah, and then of course, because Link used the wild growth, he didn't have anything to save himself, gets caught with Tibbers over the wall, and TSM just steamrolled him after that.
Bouncing back from that early mistake. I wouldn't say nice, but bouncing back nicely. Dig versus Cloud9 is our next highlight. This was a crazy back and forth matchup that was anyone's game the whole time.
Yeah, and right from the start, you could see Dignitas's bottom lane getting the level 2 all-in onto Cloud9. That Cloud9 bottom lane really performed at IEM last week, but that time, Dignitas took him out.
A big Meteos man drop here onto the Dragon, smites it down, and then they are able to take complete control of this fight.
Yeah, crazy, crazy team fight. Just watch how Sneaky was able to stay alive in the back of this one. Ends up picking up a triple kill for himself, even though Caston was the one jumping all around. At this point, it seemed like Cloud9 had seized control.
And who would have thought it, that the B word would have been where Dignitas gets the upper hand in this game. A 32-minute Baron attempt gives them a good hold on the match.
Yeah, Meteos jumped in too late, and Dignitas using Baron as an ally. Good strategic play there to get themselves back in the game. And this one was anyone's game at this point. Dignitas now on the offensive.
And Dignitas trying to do too much too early, falling back on some bad habits, and they put themselves in a spot for Cloud9 to completely take control of the game again.
One clean initiation, 41 minutes into the game, meant everything for Cloud9 there. This was a clean ace for them, and they took that fight all the way across the map and finished off the Nexus.
Since he Dig not too happy with that matchup. A Pantheon for Meteos was huge that game. Next up, XDG versus Team Solo Mid. Reggie taking the stage for the last time, looking to help Team Solo Mid finish with that perfect record. And Zuna did not have fun this game.
Yeah, this was not fun for him. 1, 2, 3, 4 coming in right here. They were just picking on him again and again. Reggie, he had the Ignite on him. I don't really think he needed to hit him with the barrel, but he did it anyway.
He did it anyways, one after the other. They wanted to keep solidifying these kills. Lucky for Zuna, there was that one chance when he was able to get out. Actually,
no, Pantheon.
There was not a chance where Zuna got out. It was every time they had his number. Team Solo Mid, 17-4 in that clip, and it was going to be 18-4 when the surrender comes up.
Yeah, what a painful loss that was for XGG, and another dominating victory for TSM, closing out that perfect Super Week.
Dignitas versus Curse, our next highlight. Speaking of retirements, Curse's St. Vicious back to the bench to make way for their new support, Money Fufu.
Who, by the way, is a good Thresh player, timing the Lantern perfectly for that early gank, getting Kiwi Kid down, and really starting this game off well for Curse.
One after the other, I think that will be a complete ban against him. Here we see the Lantern going to comp. He wants to catch the axe. Little Bunny Fufu helping to pop Kiwi Kids on the head here.
And no, Comp was not blind. He wanted to catch his axe before taking that Lantern. And it's a good thing, too, because it gave him just enough damage to finish off Cutie Pie before going down himself.
Curse ends that Super Week, coming in 3-1. Great games for them. Definitely a lot of momentum that they wanted
big
to have
turnaround
with
week
that.
for Curse.
Up next, Cloud9 versus Counterlogic Gaming. To highlight this one, a 13-4 Cloud9 taking on the 11-7 CLG.
And this may have been the most exciting game of North American Super Week just because of how crazy the beginning was. Afromu just chasing down everybody on Cloud9. Sneaky, even through the barrier, Afromu shows why support is so easy.
That last red buff attack really kept them in range. Afromu doing everything he can as a support. As Kobe said, godlike play indeed. And we see here 10 minutes, just Cloud9, or rather CLG, could not run away from Cloud9 here.
gets knocked behind. And even though he tries he may with the Dragon's Descent, he's a fat man. He can chase him pretty well for some reason. And he finished him off with a barrel.
Some reason indeed. You just got that drunken rage on and you get to move faster than usual. This huge play, he did it at IEM. He doubles it up and does it here with the double barrel takedown.
Yeah, he didn't even expect to get 2. That's why he's got that big smile on his face. But it's like, oh, well, I guess we can win the game now. Big win for Cloud9.
Following in Team Solomid's footsteps, they get themselves a perfect week as well. It's pretty nice for 2 teams in the NALCS. After 16 games, 3 Kassadins, and 2 perfect performances, let's take a look at the standings. Thanks to their 4-0 records during Super Week, Team Solomid and Cloud9 have locked in their postseason participation, while CLG is on the way to their first winning split in the LCS ever.
Out of the 4 teams in the bottom half of the standings, Curse is the only squad that won more games than they lost during Week 8, and thanks to their 3-0 performance, they jumped up to 5th place and are now in control of their own playoff destiny.
We have a roster update as well to discuss heading into Week 9. The Evil Geniuses have been forced to make a lineup change due to some visa issues.
Yeah, so Crepo, Snoopy, and Yellow Pete have officially been moved to the bench for this week because they're not actually in the continent. And in their place, they're going to be subbing in Robert X. Lee, a challenger veteran and AD carry, Ken, who was formerly Executioner Ken at support, and then also a relatively new guy on the scene, player named ThinkCard, who will be making his LCS debut in the jungle.
And while EG is trying to keep their postseason hopes alive, Team Solomid and Cloud9, as we said, have already locked in their playoff spots.
Yeah, these 2 teams have not only won the first 2 NALCS splits, they have held down the top 2 spots in the NALCS this split as well. And it doesn't look like that's going to change anytime soon. Team Solomid can lock in their second top 2 finish in 3 LCS splits with just 3 more wins. If they win 4 more times, they're actually going to equal their win record from the 2013 spring split. And if they run the table, they will match Cloud9's 25-3 record-setting split from the summer of 2013. With Bjergsen finally back in the mid lane for TSM, that is a real possibility. Cloud9, on the other hand, will have to beat CLG and win 3 other times or win 5 games total against any opponent to lock in their second straight LCS playoff bye. And just as a note, so far the NALCS team that has finished first in the standings has also finished first in the playoffs. So, if we believe in trends, the team that ends Week 11 in first place in the standings will be the North American team representing at the All-Stars.
And while Team Solomid finally have Bjergsen back this week, so far this spring, the leader of the team, at least statistically, has been their Wild Turtle.
Yeah, Wild Turtle has had an amazing season statistically. He leads the entire LCS in kills, goal permitted, and KDA. He also leads all AD carries in assists, if you can believe it. Also, the fewest deaths of anyone in that role in North America. So, while 4 TSM members have received weekly MVPs so far, Wild Turtle hasn't gotten one. But despite that fact, his game has reached new levels. The last 2 weeks in particular, Rib, have been extra impressive because he has been performing with even more pressure on him since Bjergsen's been out of the lineup.
Well, coming up this week, Wild Turtle will have 2 chances to earn his first MVP as all 8 NA teams hit the Rift twice. TSM kicks off our Saturday action when they take on XTG, and then it's Curse versus Dignitas. Coast facing Cloud9 and Evil Geniuses battling it out against Counterlogic Gaming.
Then on Sunday, Team Solomid starts up the second day of games when they face off against Team Dignitas. That's followed by Coast versus CLG, XDG battling Curse, and Week 9 wraps up with Cloud9 taking on the Evil Geniuses.
And while we've talked a lot about TSM and Cloud9's bid for a first-round bye, the rest of the LCS teams are scrambling to secure their spots in the postseason. That brings us to our North American BF game of the week, Curse versus Dignitas.
Yeah, and even though this isn't the battle for the top of the standings, it is still a good game. It is a struggle for these 2 teams to fight for playoff positioning as we hit the home stretch. Curse, they're coming off a 3-1 performance in Super Week. Their new support, Bunny Fufu, looks solid, but so is every new support in the LCS, and he's only had real success on Thresh. Dignitas, on the other hand, hasn't had a winning week, get this, since Week 2. And if the trends continue, they will not have it this week either. Curse as well has owned against Dignitas. Quas has a KDA of 19 against them. Voyboy has a KDA ratio of 10 against Scar and crew. And whether support is Saint Vicious or Bunny Fufu, the team KDA for Curse is impressive against their longtime rival Dignitas.
And with that, it is time to move from the game of this week to the best plays from last week. Let's take a look at the top 5 mind-blowing moments from the League Championship Series, Super Week 8. Coming in at number 5, an itsy-bitsy spider dodges an unstoppable force.
And actually, Peke is not backing off from this one. He's going for it. Oh, unstoppable force got repelled away from by Pela. Holy moly.
I cannot believe he repelled the unstoppable force. That was incredible timing.
Unreal reactions. Number 4, though, Afternoon just puts on his running shoes and chases down
Dexter
Cloud9.
coming up with a kill there, but this is bad.
Meteos.
Meteos gets the Q and execute down onto him. Double lift very low here. This could be a double kill for Meteos. Can he get the extra damage down? The red buff is ticking. Red buff gonna take him down, but he gets taken down in the well. Oh my God, Afro still going on. The minion sneaky. Don't shoot a minion. Oh my God, minion's OP. The barrier. Afro moved the Zenith blade. He double piece. He wants it, and he gets the kill.
Afro move comes out the victor.
Coming in at number 3, a sick Voy secures an even sicker
Showing
quadra
up big
kill.
in this fight, looking for Benny now as well. Can they find it? Whimsy onto himself. There's the E, there's the Q. Flash in, it's going to be triple kill. Now can Sheep go down? Stolen away by Cop. Voy, can you go for the quadra? And it is. Scumbag Cop steals the penta away. Huge for Voy.
So close to a panic kill after sitting out the start of the game sick, but they're back now. Oh man, and then number 2, Nintendo with the godlike prediction on Vi.
Yeah, now they're going to see him. The Flash Flay comes in. Oh, he gets it again.
What in
he
the
did the
world?
same thing to Dyrus in their last game.
Nintendo is pretty much a god.
And coming in at number 1, the play this week gets everyone all shook
I
up.
don't actually know if they really saw each other there, but the Q's going to land. There's the kick. Oh, into the hook. It doesn't get much better than that, I'm afraid. Tab picks up the kill onto Celiver. What a combo from Alliance.
Absolutely beautiful.
And no, it doesn't get much better than that.
They had to know exactly when he was going to kick him back and at what angle. I mean, the fact, it's like they guessed, but they knew at the same time.
Preshow has its own time too. Crazy plays. All right, guys, that's it for this week's LCS preview show. The European LCS is locked and loaded. But before we go, let me say thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.